Hey everyone, today I'm going to go over some new and interesting news that we have for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. And that is the fact that in the most latest Capcom More video, this is an ongoing series that they have where they interview a wide variety of creators and talent that work for, of course, Capcom and create iconic games. And in the latest episode, they just so happened to speak about Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, and specifically an interview with both Director Suzuki of Sunbreak and the planner Daisuke Wakahara. It was a rather long video, about 13 minutes long. I decided to transcribe pretty much a lot of it, put a little bit of a synopsis for each one of the topics that they decided to discuss. In it, they speak a little bit about, of course, the game's creation and plenty of different phases, which we're going to be going over. They talk a little bit about the upcoming free title update as well, and also they discuss a little bit of the project's ideas as to how they came about, and more importantly the monsters introductions and how those also came about as well. Now in the beginning of the video, they do have a specific section where they talk about to Suzuki and of course the planner as well, Daisuke Wakahara, separately. So they kind of like give them a little bit of an introduction for each one of them as to what they are and what they do. And when speaking to Suzuki right off the bat, they actually asked him what was he actually working on, and he mentions that he's working on the most latest upcoming free title update, and his hope is that they look forward to it. At the same time, he's also looking over some concept art that's been put together from the game, and he states that he couldn't have done it without the planner's work, Daisuke Wakahara. I should also mention that there's another separate developer interview with this specific planner and the director, Daisuke Wakahara. He does get to speak regarding some of like the creation of some of the cut trailers and like presentations and stuff. I'm going to be working on translating that interview soon after this video's up, so I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this going forward. So in the next section, when they finally get to speak with Daisuke, they ask him what is he up to, and he mentioned that he's working on a brand new monsters intro, but of course he doesn't necessarily tell us which one it is. He also mentions that he's been looking over recently at the Daimyo Hermitor one for like suggestions and ideas. So I'm not necessarily sure if he's hinting at something, maybe another crab monster coming, but based of course on the leaks, that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. He explains that being a planner is aligning a lot of concept art, vision, and execution, and making sure that it works in tandem. This goes both for gameplay and the introductions as well, which is what he focuses on, making sure that everything is cohesive with one vision. When they ask him to talk a little bit further about the intros, they mentioned that he basically needs to go somewhere because the staff is currently working on something and on the next free title update. But of course they kind of do that whole thing where they blurry the like monitors, so you don't necessarily get to see what it is they're actually working on. In the next section of the interview, Daisuke mentions that the reason why we actually got to see Shogun Senator as the first official returning monster and the first movie introduction that we got to see for Sunbreak was actually a deliberately chosen idea, as it was a popular monster in the West for Western audiences, and it was basically lining up with the theme for Sunbreak. Then they go ahead and show a little bit of like the planning stages for the introduction scenes of Daimyo Hermitor as well, and he explains that it was because the monster that appeared in a previous game with Meowsers, they also wanted to continue that tradition for this version of his intro, which is something that of course we do get to see in game. Lastly, he mentions that everything is calculated from the monster's attacks, and sometimes even the monster's moves and skills that you get to see in each one of the trailers and the cutscenes and everything along those lines. And it's also intricately shown that even in intros and trailers are deliberately chosen to give players a better understanding as to what the developers have in store for them. After that, they do a little bit of a side-by-side interview with both Suzuki, the director, and of course Daisuke, the planner, mostly to discuss how it all came about. Suzuki introduces himself once again, and he states that he's been working on Monster Hunter games for a very long time. Monster Hunter 4, Monster Hunter Cross, Double Cross, World, and Iceborne. He had a hand in say in just about all the major releases for quite a while. He steered the ship, if you will, for some of those games, being a director and making sure that the rest of the development team carries out what the planner has set out in motion. Daisuke also goes ahead and states that one of the ongoing projects that he's working on is the continual delivery of event quests. That is something that they're very passionate about, which I found kind of humorous, since it's kind of like a direct contrast between what the developer presents it as and how the audience perceives it. All you guys, every single time that I talk about event quests, everyone's just always complaining about them. But you know, the way the developers talk about the event quests is always like an uplifting manner, like they're very proud of what they're doing. Suzuki then states that originally most ideas or suggestions for game development are, in a case specifically for Sunbreak, are presented with a specific purpose. What do you want the hunters to experience? What do you want them to enjoy? That's basically the idea presented by the director and then is discussed with the planter and implemented with the rest of the development staff. However, that's not only set in stone, and some ideas are more broad when using concept art, which is introducing plenty of different ideas. And even the planter, in this case Daisuke, wants to throw something in. Then it's something a little bit more difficult, and it's also discussed as well. They do their best to bring it to life, which sometimes causes the rest of the development team to adjust and change things until it's properly implemented in the game. And they also specifically mention switch skills. So this leads me to believe that switch skills was an idea that was suggested by someone in staff. Obviously, they had to work that in and kind of adjust it. But, you know, kind of like when you really think about it at the end of the day, not a lot of people are using switch kills nowadays. Once you have your setup, your loadout, you don't really think about it all that much. No one's really doing that, you know, real gameplay wise. Daisuke also explains that there's a lot going on into the planning phases of a game, and they're involved in all parts of it since the presentation. So it's all kind of like a front-facing part of video game production, letting gamers know just what is possible and iterating on what came before it, and they take a lot of pride in that. Daisuke also mentions that one of the most powerful tools as a planner and a director may have at their disposal is the ideas of the staff. It's always best to have a varied set of interests so you can implement ideas from other type of media. They specifically mention like card games and stuff into your game and find different ways to make them work however possible. This is why it's best to understand that games aren't made by one person, or one single person's vision is often never the driving factor. But and specifically for a release like Sunbreak, it's a collective work of people suggesting ideas and finding the middle ground to make them happen. Then Suzuki jumps in and he explains that the drive for a game is something that many talented artists and directors have kind of like going on at Capcom. Understanding and knowing when not to give up on an idea or a suggestion from the staff member and reworking it and finding a way to fit it into the game is what gets them the most joy. It really is a showcase of passion from the staff, not just for the ultimate game, but also a personal thing as well. That they also mentioned that one of the things that they enjoy the most is the user experience, and it's important not just in the early build phases of a game, but also when it launches and as they see fans discussing like their favorite parts of a brand new release. And in closing, Daisuke also echoes a little bit of what director Suzuki previously stated, where he says that users and players only see the end result. He basically says something along the lines of like, is it good? Was it fun? Did I like it? But as a planner and of course developer, all you're trying to do is make sure that those responses are always yes, yes, and yes. And if you don't hit any of them or just hit a few of them, then it's back to the drawing board, because ultimately that's what being a passionate creator is all about. So that's pretty much the entire interview that they provided in this specific video. I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below for the entire video. Of course, it's all in Japanese. I did a little bit of a synopsis translation, if you will, for the entire thing. It took me a little bit of a while trying to put this together, since I always find these type of developer interviews interesting. I know a lot of people don't necessarily care about what the developers are. They just, you know, are more interested in like new weapons, more DLC, more monsters. I understand that, but I'm also, you know, I'm that type of person that is always interested in what the creators are thinking, what it is that they're trying to achieve with a brand new idea. Kind of like the entire thing with the switch skills. It seems like it was something of an idea that they worked on quite a bit. They try to implement it as best as possible. It's certainly something that they tried to sell as a feature heading into Sunbreak. But now, of course, now what, 3 months in, 4 months into the game, you know, almost no one uses it because we just don't necessarily find it all that useful. Maybe it is for some builds, but not necessarily for every build. Therefore, that seems to be like an idea that was like well thought out, but probably not perfectly implemented. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.